a collab video, but I am a little bit sick, so bear with me. We all got to pick a princess from Adventure Time, and I went with Flame Princess. As you can see, these are some initial sketches that I did when I really wasn't kind of sure how to translate her to a doll, but I knew that I loved her character from when I was a kid watching the show, so I kind of knew that I had to pick her. She changes a little bit from those initial sketches, but you'll just have to see as we go through the video how she ends up looking in the end. I think she turned out really nice, but more on that later on. Here you can see what hair I'm going to be using for her. I knew I definitely wanted to use a kind of gradient effect when I was rerouting her, just to give the illusion of a flame. Originally when I picked her, I thought I was going to do a yarn wig and like have it be brushed up, but I kind of decided against that in the end. Here's where you can start to see the flame illusion I mentioned coming together. I kept the white shorter because where the heat is more concentrated in a flame, especially at the base in the middle, it always seems to be a little bit lighter. So I wanted to replicate that in the hair. So that's why the white bit there is shorter than the rest. And now we're on to the sculpting elements of it. I ended up really liking how the sculpting that I did ended up coming out. I think I wanted to push myself with sculpting something a bit more intricate. I've sculpted a lot of elf ears on my dolls in the past, and I'd say I've gotten quite well versed in sculpting with the armor that I do for my dolls, but I wanted to try something a little bit on a smaller scale rather than a full body piece with Flame Princess. When I sculpt with the clay, I like to use my hole poker tool that you'll see me getting out now. I use that to make the holes bigger in my reroutes, but I also use it to maneuver the clay and manipulate it manipulate it. I use it to move the clay. I use it to move the clay when it's too small for my fingers. So you can see that I can like kind of squish it down with my fingers there and place it. But anything that requires it to be moved just a little bit, I'll use the hole punching tool. I like anything that's a little bit asymmetrical, so I decided to add another one of these arm cuffs but onto her thigh. I figured since I wasn't going to be changing Cleo's skin tone, I wanted to include the yellow where I could, and that made the most sense for me to include that through gold and gold jewelry. So you'll see that I really go with elements that are a lot of gold and kind of coal, and almost like the charred effect that you get left behind when something burns. You'll see that I'll use that a lot in her as well. I really kind of wanted to just signify the fire elements of her especially. Alright, it's face up time. I'm using a watercolor pencil for these. You'll get to see which face up I ended up doing here as well. But I like to just sketch it on with a white pencil first and create a base for everything of where I'm going to put the acrylic paints. Now I'm just detailing the face up a little bit with some black. This is the brand that I use. I've been using it since school. Back in the day when I stole a set from the cupboard. I don't have to voluntarily admit that, but we're all friends here. I can say that openly now. I added on these black tears. Now, bear with me. I know it kind of strays from her traditional artwork. When I thought about Flame Princess when I watched the show as a kid, I always remember her being very hot and cold, as well as the elements from her story and how sad it actually is. You know, she's made of fire, she can't touch anybody, she has this hot and cold on and off relationship with Finn. There's this scene especially that I remember where she's sitting in grass and everything around her is burning, so she can't even really enjoy anything outside her own kingdom that she's been trapped in for 14 years. The idea with the tears that I had was when I mentioned earlier about how when things are set on fire they leave behind that soot charcoal. I wanted it to kind of appear as if she's been crying, but when she's crying they're leaving behind almost a scorch mark under her eyes with a kind of soot look of them being like charcoal tears left on her cheek. It's a little bit, you know, it stretches a little bit far from the original design from the show, but I think it's a nice touch for her character, I think was where I was going with that. For the gold paint that I'm using the pearl paint on the right there. I'll flip-flop between the two sometimes. The Warhammer one is a little bit darker, but this one that I'm using here is a lot lighter, and I'm using that very watered down so that it creates almost like a highlighting effect on her cheeks, nose, and chin. On her forehead, I'm building up orange, yellow, gold, and red because I'm going to be putting the crystal in the center, so I wanted it to have like a burst of color coming out from behind it. After I've laid down the paint on her ears that I sculpted, I'm using the Nikki Tutorials eyeshadow palette, and I'll go in and I'm using the red shade, packing that on the tips of the ears. Now here's what you'll see about the flip-flop and back and forth. We've gone back to when I first started laying down that base color. here, so you can just get a bit of an idea of how I incorporated some of that yellow from her original design into the doll version of her. I'm also using the eyeshadow palette with that orange colour and packing that onto the middle of her legs and arms and stomach. You can see I've also used some of that red on her joints and her stomach as well, just so it kind of gives the gradient effect that fire has. I got these nail gems. They ended up being like the perfect size and shape, so I'm just popping one of those on her head there. Now we're onto the face up. This is my favorite part of the whole process. I use these acrylic paints. They're from the Works if you're in the UK, but I imagine any brand of acrylic paints will do. And then any nail art brush that you can find. I'm going in thin layers with this. I've already kind of got the sketch down of what I wanted to do with my watercolor pencils I mentioned previously. I like to go on top of that with the acrylic paints because it just kind of makes everything pop a little bit better. For any glossy bits, I use this Liquitex Acrylic Mediums Gloss Varnish. You'll see in the end that I used it on some areas of the face up. Alright, outfit time. I had a bit of a struggle with the outfit, I'm not gonna lie. I wasn't too sure where I wanted to take it. I think I definitely got hung up on the idea of your style, and that led me astray with these two sketches that I did. The one on the right is the first one, and then the one on the left is the more refined one that I ended up doing. I didn't record any of it because it was a stressful time, so you'll have to see what I end up doing. Recently for my dolls I've been making custom stands, so that's what I'm doing here. I mentioned previously that scorched idea of the grass around her feet, so that's what I'm doing with the artificial moss here and then the black paint. We are coming to the end now, so I wanted to give a special mention to everybody that was involved in this collab with me. Here are their @s on Instagram specifically. I'll be putting their video links in the description of this video and making a YouTube playlist so everybody can go and check out theirs as well. They all made a different princess or character from Adventure Time, and I think they all turned out really great together. They all look really good together. Kind of young teenage years. I really enjoyed Adventure Time, so it's been a pleasure to work with everybody on a show that is important to me. Thank you Charlie and Amber for inviting me to be in this collab. It feels very lovely to get to collab with people and feel like you're making friends in this community. Anyway, here's Flame Princess. Take it away, Jake.
Oh, Flame Princess, I think you're rad. I really want to kiss you right in front of your dad. 'Cause I think you're great, I wanna be your mate, or maybe go on a date. 'Cause it feels like there's a fire inside my body, like there's a fire inside my heart. It's like this fire is gonna consume me if I keep waiting for this thing to start. Oh, I feel like I'm...
That was stunning, Jake. Oh, he's still going. Listen, listen. Anyway, here's everybody's dolls. You can find their videos in the description. Thanks for watching.